In this video, we're going to talk about how Josh Jobe and Drake Thomas have really pushed the Seattle Seahawks boundary side coverages to another level in 2025. Surprising development, maybe. I know that there was a lot of questions about the will linebacker position. Josh Jobe played extremely well to finish the 2024 season. I think he finished with 440 snaps overall, 1 interception, 7 PDs. He's already exceeded those two numbers. In fact, all 3 of those numbers so far in 2025. Drake Thomas, a really interesting story as well. 37 snaps last season on defense, 4 in his rookie year of 2023. Coming into the year, just over 40 snaps. He's played over 70 plays in each of the last 2 games. The questions about the will linebacker position from a coverage standpoint have really been answered. The Seattle Seahawks play a unique set of coverages into the boundary, almost always relying on man, but I'm going to show you at least 3 iterations in this video where these 2 guys are doing an exceptional job in zone and giving quarterbacks a lot to read post-snap, such that the 4-man rush, the organic 4-man rush, can get there in time and really disrupt opposing quarterbacks just as much as pretty much every other team in the league. So just like most of my videos, for purposes of illustration, I'll put a blue line here to illustrate where the field and boundary is. Jobe and Thomas almost always located into the boundary. I picked this play specifically because, number one, it's an amazing interception by Jobe against, I think it's Ricky Pearsall in the 4th quarter of their Week 1 loss to the 49ers. But also because it illustrates, I think, the subtle ways that guys like Thomas can impact the game. You'll get a really good idea of this from the end zone angle. He just forces Pearsall to kind of adjust or hedge his route vertically. Sorry about that. Hedge his route vertically such that it helps Jobe stay in contact. And then, of course, Jobe undercuts it. They play a lot of man in Seattle to the boundary. Typically, it's been with Reek Woolen, who's been phased out of this role, if you will. Jobe does a great job of going up to high point this football. We didn't know necessarily at this point that he was going to play at this high of a level all season. This was a ridiculous snap, a ridiculous rep by him, like I said, to get an interception in a critical moment. The end zone angle, I think, will do it a little bit more justice for Thomas, and I'll give you another illustration of this near the end of the video. Same play from the end zone angle, just about how aware he is, number one, of the routes that he's seen and how he can also kind of force receivers to expand or adjust their route because of his positioning post-snap. I think it's an underrated element of this play, and it's something that a lot of inside linebackers kind of go out of their way to avoid, basically trying to make sure that they don't make contact with receivers because the rule set in the NFL is obviously so balanced or skewed towards the offensive side. The effort for the Seattle Seahawks pass rush, that's well documented. I've talked about it in at least 2 videos this season. This one is focusing on Jobe and Thomas in terms of boundary side coverage. Of course, technically here, this interception occurs to the field because Jobe chased Pearsall all the way across the field. Jobe, again, focusing on the boundary side coverage. I've actually, discussed these a couple of these plays already. This is their Week 2 win over the Steelers. 3rd and 6. He's actually not targeted here. He'll be covering DK Metcalf. I just think it's notable how physical he is and how committed he is to a style of play that suits this team. Jamming DK Metcalf immediately on the snap. And the one thing I'll say about Josh Jobe is he competes throughout the entirety of the route. At the release point, in this case, not letting DK Metcalf release at all. And look how he's just riding him physically towards the sideline, such that he's not allowing DK to get any level of comfort. Not a single breath was taken by DK that was comfortable on this play. This is the 3rd down where Leonard Williams chases down Aaron Rodgers, trying to escape out of there. So, of course, a bad decision by him. Really picked that play to illustrate what Jobe does consistently. Penalty or not, go ahead and debate. I really don't care. I like his commitment to being physical against even bigger receivers that we're seeing in 2025. If you ask me, he's as physical and consistently disruptive as any boundary side corner that I get to watch film of so far. This one is the double fire or double corner blitz between Jobe from the boundary and Witherspoon from the field. It's during the 3rd quarter of their win over the Cardinals. They got really tight or close in the 4th corner. Great timing, great usage of this blitz by McDonald and Durde. It's typically called somewhere in this area once a team has crossed midfield. When I say it, I mean McDonald's usage of it, even dating back to Baltimore and Michigan in 2021, puts a lot of stress on underneath droppers. Now, Thomas is not on the field here, but that's the will linebacker. And then safety, I believe that's Hall, dropping out to the field. So it really functionally becomes a 2 deep, 3 under set. But the corners are going to get pressure. That's one of the facets of this play. It allows athletes like Jobe and Witherspoon to attack from outside the blocking scheme. I love this play because, first of all, it's Byron Murphy's sack on the first snap against the Jags in Week 6, but it really gives us an idea of focusing on Jobe and Thomas and how they play in zone. This is, of course, the game with no Witherspoon, no Love, no Woolen, and these guys were able to make it work. Shaq Griffin, I think, was the corner on the other side of the field. So Murphy's going to get the sack. It's a 12 personnel set on the first snap of the game. A lot going on. You've got DeMarcus Lawrence matching the running back into the boundary. But from a zone standpoint, watch how Thomas and Jobe are really kind of working together in combination. You can see both of they're very synchronized with the way they drop her. You can tell they're trained by the same coaches, making contact ever so slight with the receiver on the outside in the case of Jobe, and then the inside receiver, which I believe is BTJ in the case of Thomas. 3-man rush where they drop 8, so it's a 2-high coverage shell. And Jobe and Thomas are set to the boundary, which is exactly where Trevor Lawrence is looking. He's unable to find anything because nobody's open. And then as a result, has to scramble out of there, and it's Byron Murphy on a 3-man rush that finishes him off. Same game, the win over the Jags in Week 6. 5th possession now. It's a 3rd and 8. Thomas and Jobe, once again, above this blue line, so into the boundary. They're going to drop out into zone. It's a quarter, half, or cover 6. Ends up being a sack by DeMarcus Lawrence, and I think Leonard Williams is in the middle of the disruption as well. You can see that initially, during his drop, Trevor Lawrence is looking into the boundary where you've got Jobe from a press man alignment, at least early, bailing out and getting depth to basically be a 1/4 or quarter portion of the field defender, with Bryant on the other side being the half field in a cover 6. Lawrence looking to the top side, immediately recognizes, okay, I've got nothing. This is Thomas, who I think he does a nice job, if you ask me, of staying between routes generally. Lawrence is off of that side of the field from his visual focus. But we're just talking about Thomas. I think he's very balanced in coverage, smart, certainly undersized for the NFL level, that is 5'11", 230, not undersized for a normal person. But he knows exactly where to be in these zone coverages. And in my opinion, oftentimes, the coverage on the back end, whether it's man or zone, is really setting up the pass rush to win because it's giving quarterbacks a whole lot to think about post-snap. What coverage is it? Where can I throw the ball? And if that adds, 0.5 or 0.8 seconds to the quarterback's processing, at that point, one of the front 4 is oftentimes getting home for a sack. Week 4, I believe it's Week 4, against the Arizona Cardinals, Jobe in yellow and then Thomas in blue. Another example of zone, if you ask me, where these guys react to the routes and read them expertly. So it's quarter, half, or cover 6, but it's the opposite of the one that I just showed you. In the previous one against the Jags, Jobe was getting depth, and then the other corner, Griffin, was sitting in the flats. That's not what we have here. We have an inversion of that. Jobe sits down in the flats, and he's taken over the running back route to his right, and then Woolen and the safety to the field are in the quarter delineation in a cover 6. Thomas also gets underneath of the tight end route such that he's funneling that tight end to the boundary side safety who releases McBride across the field. And Nwosu gets there anyway. In my opinion, this is another example where the quarterback, Kyler Murray here, looks into the boundary, tries to process the coverage quickly, and some type of change-up perhaps. Maybe he's expecting man and getting zone, or expecting zone and getting man in other cases, forces him to hold on to the football, try to process things, and in this case, Nwosu gets there for the sack. I think that sometimes you get covered sacks, and sometimes you get things that are declared or called a coverage sack, but really what they've done is just add another layer of processing to the quarterback. I do want to focus on some of the individual skills that these guys have. In terms of Thomas, this play was surprising for me. It may not have been for you. This is from Week 6 against the Jags. Of course, it's this really powerful move against the left tackle that Seattle took advantage of. So far this year, Thomas has 32 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 passes defensed. He's got as many tackles in 2025 as almost as many as he had snaps in 2024. So this is the matchup that I think the Seahawks really took advantage of. I've mentioned it in a video last week. That's one of the things I think McDonald and Jobe are doing a great job of, and that's attacking certain pass pro schemes, or in this case, attacking certain players. To group these two guys together is a little bit more problematic because it's quite obvious sometimes the way that Josh Jobe affects a game. His physical, sticky coverage, the ability to stay with premier athletes like Travis Hunter. When the ball is in the air, we know who the player is that's guarding him. In this case, it's Jobe into the boundary. Kind of like a sail corner route by Travis Hunter. Drake Thomas is a little bit more subtle at times, okay? But when I talk about Jobe competing during the entirety of the route, this is what I mean. Presenting the ability or the option to jam the receiver. He doesn't get that, so he ends up running, trying to stay hip to hip with Hunter, and that's exactly where Trevor Lawrence is looking. Thomas is uninvolved in this particular snap. There is no forfeit in Josh Jobe at all. What I mean is he will not forfeit any level of physicality. He plays with an edge and has a mentality of, I don't care if I'm going to get penalized. I think he's been penalized 6 times so far in 2025, one of which was offsetting, a second which was declined, and his 4 penalties that I believe have been accepted have been for a total of 20 yards. Essentially, he's not going to give in, whether he is penalized or not. I love his approach. There's other more well-known boundary side corners in the NFL, but for my money, he's playing at an equivalent level to pretty much anyone I've been able to watch film of so far. For Thomas, and this will be the last play that I'll show you, but each and every single one, you should notice Jobe and Thomas are into the boundary. This is perhaps understated, if you will. His alignment gives him the ability to defend this route. He doesn't get a PD or pass defense or anything like that, but what he does is he forces the tight end route to expand, and that allows a more clean or easy read for Love, who really probably should have got an interception. Essentially, Thomas is going to widen up this route by his alignment and his post-snap reaction to the play. Widens up, and I don't think he ever really tries to hit home runs. And what I mean by that is the slight redirections of receivers, or in this case, a tight end. He's not trying to hit a home run or even a triple, maybe perhaps a double. A whole bunch of singles gets the job done here. Why? Because in my opinion, he forced this route to expand outside more than the Arizona wanted it to, such that when the tight end does bring his route back to the inside, Love can jump it and essentially get in front of it. Really could have been a huge interception, I think, in the second quarter as Seattle's defense was swarming early on. My point is that Drake Thomas, in my opinion, helps expand routes. He's a very smart, balanced football player, someone who knows where he needs to fit within a zone defensive structure. Look at the alignment that he has compared to the tight end. Equivalent, or almost equivalent, I should say, to Ernest Jones IV on the other side, inside leverage of the receiver on the opposite side to the field. He'll expand on this route and basically create some cushion or width in the tight end's route that Arizona didn't want to be there. We're talking about right here. And that forces the tight end's route, that forces the throw, to be a little bit off timing-wise, and Jordan Love is able to cut in front of it. Really probably could have had an interception. I think both of these guys have added layers to the defense in 2025 that were question marks, to be honest with you. Boundary side corner, was Reek Willen going to be able to give you anything near his tremendous ceiling, number one? And number two, who was going to play will linebacker, and would they be able to perform at a level commensurate with everybody else on this defense? Right now, Seattle is allowing the ninth least points or seventh least points, in the NFL, just under 20 at 19.4 points per game. When you combine that with their scoring average offensively of 27.6, which is fifth, of course you've got a winning formula. They're 5-2, could very easily be 6-1, or some justification for 7-0 as well. What you're looking at defensively is most weeks allowing 20 or below first downs. In addition, the last 2 weeks against the Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars, 250 yards allowed and 270 yards allowed. That's a winning formula. The real outliers here, obviously, is the 38-35 loss to the Bucs in Week 5 I think the loss of Reek Woolen during that game to a concussion had a huge impact. These two guys, maybe boundary lockdown was a little bit of an exaggeration, but in my opinion, they are forcing offenses to be far less efficient throwing the football into the boundary than those offenses expect to be. The loss against the Buccaneers, first of all, I'd love to see those teams match up again because that means that they would meet in the playoffs. The San Francisco 49ers loss in week 1, of course, that was one that Seattle would like to have back or could have clearly gotten a victory there. I think it's been a great start to the season. The offense perhaps is a surprising for some, myself included, in terms of the consistency with which they've been able to generate yards and be able to score a lot of points. They were held to the second least amount of yards on the offensive side against the Texans in week 7. Of course, multiple turnovers, 4 in fact. Defensively have only forced 1 turnover in their last 3 games, but still holding teams down, again, with the exception being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you remove that game from their ledger, you're talking about a team that's only given up 20 points 1 time in 2025. If memory serves, the will linebacker position and the boundary side corner were question marks. In fact, most people would have assumed or thought that Reek Woolen was going to play boundary side corner. Josh Jobe has proven to be a better option at this point. I don't think it's in the Seahawks' best interest to move on from Reek Woolen during the season at all. You've had health problems with Devin Witherspoon, number 1. Number 2, Woolen, to me, played well against the Texans last week, well, in their last game, I should say. And in Josh Jobe, you've got a guy who's on a 1-year contract for, I think, just under $2 million, which is pretty amazing to me that you're talking about a guy who started his career with Philly and now is hopefully going to be retained. I don't know about you. I would like to see him retained or brought back to this team because, in my opinion, he's playing at a super high level. In any case, if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. Try to focus on the boundary side coverages that the Seahawks are using, some man, some zone. Of course, Jobe's unique skills, his competitive nature, his agility, and feistiness sets up well for man coverages, which is what most teams often play into the boundary. I think the mix-up or change-ups that they've utilized in zone really suits Drake Thomas well, and those guys have really pulled it off magically and forcing quarterbacks to delay their processing such that the pass rush can get there. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, like I said, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. Number 2, if you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this film study look at Josh Jobe and Drake Thomas, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.